Yuan Fong explained to Lin Dong and the others as they traversed the crimson mine beneath them, with a dozen figures streaking through the sky. Our section of the mine is the largest in Bloodstone territory, with about 100 disciples stationed here. Of course, compared to a place like Bloodstone territory, that number isn't much. Fortunately, our Dao sect has a formidable reputation, so no one foolish enough would dare target us. As they moved through the air, Lin Dong's gaze continually swept over the surroundings. The defenses here were tight, with sentries regularly patrolling the skies, carefully watching the perimeter for any disturbances. The sheer size of this Nirvana crystal mine exceeded Lin Dong's expectations. He recalled discovering a young origin stone vein back in Qingyang town, but compared to this place, that was utterly insignificant. Under Yuan Fong's lead, the group gradually ventured deeper into the mine. The deeper they went, the more vibrant the red hues became, making the ground beneath seem as though it was on the verge of bursting into flames, creating an extraordinary sight. Suddenly, Yuan Fong descended onto a prominent stone peak, her gaze fixed ahead. Behind her, Huan, Lin Dong, and the others swiftly followed and looked out into the distance. Before them lay a scarlet forest. Towering trees with fiery red leaves swayed in the wind, their movements creating a sound like the crackling of flames, resembling a sea of fire. Lin Dong's eyes scanned the forest, his expression tightening slightly. Relying on his spiritual energy, he could sense more than a dozen violent and savage auras hidden within the forest. These presences were powerful, likely on par with those who had reached the 5th Nirvana stage. Demonic beasts? Lin Dong asked Yuan Fong, his brow furrowed. Fire crystal demon apes, a species native to Bloodstone territory. They're incredibly troublesome. Once they appear, they come in hordes, each one extremely fierce. There must be at least 40 of them. Even if we could drive them away, we'd suffer heavy casualties, Yuan Fong said, her voice grave. 40 fire crystal demon apes? Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling, standing nearby, were both shocked. Even though they were experts who had reached the 7th Nirvana stage, that number would be quite a challenge. Fongjia, I don't remember fire crystal demon apes ever appearing around here before. Why have they suddenly shown up in such numbers? Huan asked, her brows knitted in confusion. I'm not sure either. These fire crystal demon apes keep emerging, disrupting our mining efforts. I was forced to send a message to the sect for help, Yuan Fong said with a shake of her head. There's probably something in that forest that's drawing them in, Lin Dong interjected. Noticing the questioning gazes turned his way, he continued, demonic beasts are highly sensitive to the energy of heaven and earth. They wouldn't gather here for no reason. If they're here, there must be something attracting them. We've explored that forest before and found no heavenly treasures, Yuan Fong said with a frown. Just because there wasn't anything before doesn't mean there's nothing now, Lin Dong shrugged. But I guess we won't know until we go in and take a look. As he spoke, his gaze fixed on the scarlet forest in the distance. For some reason, he could sense a subtle disturbance in the flow of heaven and earth energy in that area. Go in? The fire crystal demon apes won't be easy to deal with, Yuan Fong replied. Jiang Kuan and the others nodded in agreement. Forcing their way through such a large group of beasts wouldn't be simple, and who knew what else lay hidden in the forest? Lin Dong frowned as well. It wasn't impossible to fight their way through, but among them, only 4 were capable of handling such a task. Leave it to me. Why go head-to-head with these brutes? Huan suddenly stepped forward, a soft smile on her face. Lin Dong paused, gazing into the girl's dark, bright eyes. He didn't say much, knowing better than to underestimate her due to her age. As the direct disciple of Heaven Hall, if anyone doubted Huan's abilities, they'd be a fool. With a graceful movement, Huan shot into the air, appearing above the forest. Her delicate hand waved, and a stream of primordial energy blasted into the forest below. Roar! As the energy exploded within the forest, furious, savage roars filled the air. The sound of rushing wind followed as dozens of massive crimson figures, filled with violent energy, appeared atop the giant trees, their blood-red eyes fixed on the figure of Huan. Lin Dong could now clearly see the fire crystal demon apes. Their bodies were several meters tall, covered in fiery red crystals, with waves of wild energy continuously radiating from them. Suspended in midair, EngSubs glanced down at the apes and let out a soft laugh. She extended her slender hand, tracing a line through the air as faint strands of pale blue energy gathered, forming what looked like strings of a zither. Pluck. With a light stroke of her fingers across the energy strings, a melodious tune echoed through the air. Lin Dong's pupils contracted slightly as he listened to the music. The sound seemed to blur his senses momentarily, prompting him to swiftly channel his primordial energy to block his ears, cutting off the enchanting melody. Soundwave attacks. A look of surprise flashed across Lin Dong's eyes. He hadn't expected EngSubs to use music as a form of attack. Soundwave assaults were notoriously difficult to defend against. Boom, boom. While Lin Dong was still in shock, the eyes of the fire crystal demon apes above the forest began to close, and one by one, they collapsed to the ground, the force of their falls causing the earth to tremble. Incredibly, EngSubs had put them all to sleep. All done. EngSubs smiled as she dispersed the energy strings and turned to face Lin Dong, her lips curling in a hint of triumph. It was clear she was pleased to have caught him off guard. Impressive, Lin Dong remarked, nodding in acknowledgement. His opinion of EngSubs rose even higher. This was the first time he had seen someone merge primordial energy with music. Even he would have found it challenging to counter such an attack head-on. Let's go. We should check out that forest and find out what's drawing these creatures here, EngSubs said, her tone brimming with confidence as she led the way into the forest. Lin Dong and the others quickly followed her. With no fire crystal demon apes blocking their path, they made swift progress, heading straight for the center of the forest. Lin Dong landed on a thick tree branch, his brow furrowing once again. Ever since they entered this forest, he had increasingly sensed a disturbance in the flow of heaven and earth energy. The source of that disturbance seemed to be just ahead. He raised his head and suddenly heard EngSubs let out a startled cry from up ahead. His heart skipped a beat as he rushed forward. In a few quick movements, he appeared beside her. At that moment, EngSubs' wide eyes were filled with shock as she stared ahead, her pretty face painted with disbelief. In front of them was a patch of scarlet ground, but now the earth had been split open, and a section of black wood jutted out from the soil. The dark wood was gnarled and twisted, its branches shimmering with a cold, metallic sheen. On the surface of the tree, ancient runes seemed to form naturally, and a peculiar, unusual energy radiated from them. What drew the most attention, however, were the 5 flame-like crimson fruits hanging from the branches. The fruits trembled as though they were about to drop at any moment. What is this? Lin Dong's eyes narrowed. He didn't recognize it, but the waves of energy it emitted were anything but ordinary. An immortal yuan ancient tree, EngSubs whispered, her slender hand covering her mouth in astonishment, her large eyes wide with shock. How could something like this appear here? Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling were both equally stunned, their eyes fixed on the black tree, their voices trembling with disbelief. The forest fell silent as everyone's gaze locked onto the towering black tree that had emerged from the ground. EngSubs, overcome with excitement, couldn't help but step forward, her eyes glued to the tree. However, just as she was about to move, Lin Dong's expression changed drastically. In one swift motion, he grabbed her smooth wrist and pulled her back. Boom! The moment Lin Dong yanked her away, the ground where they had stood erupted, and a massive fiery red hand slammed into the earth. A giant fiery figure shot out from the ground, landing next to the black tree. Lin Dong and EngSubs retreated to the safety of a large tree, both of them staring at the billowing dust below. There, a colossal ape with a dark crimson body stood, its violent aura sweeping out like a storm. The Fire Crystal Ape King? EngSubs' face paled slightly when she saw this beast, clearly different from the ones they had encountered before. As the dust settled in the forest, everyone's gaze pierced through the haze, locking onto the enormous creature. This gigantic figure resembled the fire crystal demon apes they had seen earlier, but it was much larger. Its entire body was a deeper red, almost as if it were clad in a suit of solid, fiery crystal armor. And within its blood-red eyes gleamed a cunning, human-like intelligence. A fire crystal ape king? Lin Dong's gaze sharpened as Huan's exclamation confirmed his suspicion. From the waves of violent energy pulsing off this creature, it was clear that its power far exceeded that of the ordinary fire crystal apes. I didn't expect even the fire crystal ape king to appear. This thing is well known in Bloodstone territory. It's been cultivating deep in the mountains for years, but who would have thought it would venture out this time? Yuan Fang's eyes narrowed coldly as she glared at the menacing beast. Huan, are you okay? Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling appeared next to Lin Dong, both of them looking at Huan with concern. I'm fine. Huan glanced at Lin Dong, hesitating for a moment as she thought of thanking him for his quick intervention. But before she could speak, Lin Dong waved her off casually, his eyes never leaving the fire crystal ape king. This nonchalance made Huan grit her teeth in frustration. Get lost, all of you. This treasure is mine, and I found it first. The fire crystal ape king roared, its massive hand sweeping the air in front of it, sending a gust of wind that blew the dust away. Its blood-red eyes were fixed on Lin Dong and the others as it growled, its voice filled with malice. Having cultivated to this level, the fire crystal ape king clearly possessed intelligence rivaling that of humans. If not for its impure bloodline, it might have already gained the ability to take human form. What a joke. This mine belongs to the Dao sect. How dare you think you can lay claim to anything here? Fire crystal ape king, if you know what's good for you, you'll take your minions and leave. Otherwise, when the experts from our sect arrive, all your years of cultivation will be for nothing. Yuan Fang sneered coldly. Heh, I've seen plenty in my years. Don't think you can scare me with the Dao sect. If you want me to leave, you kids are far from qualified. The fire crystal ape king's red eyes flashed as it laughed cruelly. What arrogance! Huan's large eyes flared with anger. You're just a beast at the 7th nirvana stage, yet you think you can act so haughtily in front of us? While demonic beasts were known for their fierce combat prowess, and although the Fire Crystal Ape King was at the 7th Nirvana stage, its combat strength clearly rivaled those at the 8th stage. But even so, among them, especially with Lin Dong's strength far exceeding his apparent rank, they had 4 7th Nirvana stage experts. The Ape King would be in for a tough fight. Lin Dong, we have to get that immortal Yuan ancient tree. Huan whispered softly to Lin Dong, her gaze fixed on the black tree. Is it really that valuable? Lin Dong asked, still unfamiliar with the significance of the immortal Yuan ancient tree. Yes, and it's even more important to our sect. The immortal Yuan ancient tree can absorb energy from heaven and earth and condense it into fruit. These fruits are extremely beneficial for disciples at our level. Lin Dong glanced at the 5 scarlet fruits hanging from the black tree. He could indeed sense the powerful energy contained within them, but 5 fruits seemed hardly enough for a massive sect like the Dao sect. What we're seeing is just a sapling. I'm not sure if it has produced any seeds yet, but if there are seeds, the value of this tree would skyrocket 100-fold. Seeds? Lin Dong's eyes sharpened. The Yuan sect has an immortal Yuan ancient tree. After years of cultivation, it's fully grown, reaching over 1,000 feet tall. Every time it bears fruit, it produces thousands of immortal Yuan fruits. That tree is one of the key reasons why the Yuan sect's disciples are stronger than those from other sects. Huan explained, her delicate face turning unusually serious. Lin Dong's heart skipped a beat. Thousands of fruits in one harvest? That was truly terrifying. However, nurturing an immortal Yuan ancient tree to such a level would require unimaginable effort. It wasn't something an individual could achieve alone. If there really are seeds inside this immortal Yuan ancient tree, the news could shake the upper ranks of our sect, Lin Dong muttered to himself. In the next moment, something seemed to dawn on him, and his expression suddenly turned serious. Considering the immense value of these seeds, if the information got out, it would certainly cause a stir in the region. Bloodstone territory was far from a peaceful place, and once the news spread, countless eyes would be drawn here. There might even be ruthless individuals lurking in the shadows, ready to strike. Under such tremendous temptation, even the Tao sect's deterrence might not be enough to keep potential thieves at bay. With their limited strength as disciples, it would be hard to suppress the lawless rogues of Bloodstone territory. Lin Dong glanced to the side, just in time to meet EngSubs' gaze. Her large, dark eyes were filled with the same seriousness. It was clear that neither of them had expected what seemed to be a routine training mission to suddenly escalate into such a difficult situation. Lin Dong pursed his lips and lowered his voice so that only the group could hear. In that case, we can't let the Ape King get away. Though his voice was soft, the chilling undertone of killing intent in his words caused EngSubs, Jiang Kuan, and the others to feel their hearts skip a beat. They understood the implications. If they let the Fire Crystal Ape King escape, the ensuing chaos from the spread of this information would bring them untold trouble. Yet, despite knowing this, they struggled to summon the same ruthless intent that Lin Dong had so easily displayed. After all, they hadn't experienced the same trials and hardships as Lin Dong. Lin Dong's right. We can't let him leave. Compared to the others, Yuan Fong was clearly more seasoned. Her eyes flashed with determination as she nodded heavily. Hearing Yuan Fong's agreement, EngSubs bit her lip and made a decisive call. Jiang Kuan, Yuan Ling, you two attack him head-on. Lin Dong, support from the side. Fangjia, have the disciples seal off this area? Even though EngSubs had heard of Lin Dong's victory against Zhang Hao, she didn't place him in the lead role. After all, this Fire Crystal Ape King was far more powerful than Zhang Hao. One misstep here could result in severe injury. Lin Dong didn't argue with her decision. He simply glanced at Yuan Fong and said quietly, Fangjia, don't let any of the Fire Crystal Apes that were put to sleep escape either. Yuan Fong was momentarily taken aback as she looked at Lin Dong's young but calm face. She hadn't expected someone of his age to be so calculating and ruthless. A silent sigh escaped her lips. Thankfully, Lin Dong was a disciple of the Tao sect. Otherwise, having such a person as an enemy would cause many sleepless nights. Junior brother Lin Dong, just focus on disrupting the Ape King. Leave the rest to us. Jiang Kuan said with a confident smile, flicking his sleeve. Go. With a soft command from EngSubs, a surge of primordial energy exploded from Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling's bodies as they shot toward the Fire Crystal Ape King, their fierce energy enveloping the towering creature. As the two attacked, EngSubs gracefully leaped onto a tall tree. With a wave of her hand, a jade-green zither appeared, exuding an aura so powerful that even Lin Dong was taken aback. The young woman in green, sitting cross-legged atop the tree, gently placed the zither on her lap. Her delicate hands, as white as mutton fat jade, reached out and lightly touched the strings. Ding-dong. The sound of the zither resonated, and the space around EngSubs seemed to distort slightly. In that moment, she became completely focused, her clear eyes fixed on the instrument as if she were in a state of deep concentration. A terrifying wave of energy began to emanate from both her and the jade zither in front of her. Lin Dong's eyes narrowed in surprise as he sensed the tremendous power coming from EngSubs. His gaze shifted to the zither, and his pupils contracted. A spiritual treasure. From the aura it exuded, it was clear that the zither was an incredibly powerful spiritual treasure. Judging by its energy, it was even stronger than the black dragon howl seal he had obtained from the ancient battlefield. It seemed this zither was among the top-tier heavenly treasures. This girl's background must be quite remarkable, Lin Dong thought. A high-grade heavenly spiritual treasure like that was no ordinary object. If it were put up for auction, it would fetch at least tens of millions of nirvana pills. Most ordinary disciples couldn't possibly afford such an item. Lin Dong didn't know much about EngSubs' background, only that her older sister was the senior disciple of Heaven Hall and the most outstanding member of Tao Sect's younger generation. Now, it seemed the two sisters likely had an extraordinary background within the sect. Zone. As Lin Dong's thoughts raced, Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling had already made their move. Their powerful primordial energy surged forth, enveloping the Fire Crystal Ape King. Want to fight? You're courting death. The Fire Crystal Ape King's blood-red eyes flashed with ferocity as it roared. Facing Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling's combined attack, it showed no sign of retreat. Instead, it stepped forward, a massive wave of murderous intent rolling off it. Its fiery red crystal-covered palm shot out, slamming toward Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling with a powerful, stinking gust of wind. Boom! The ferocious exchange of blows echoed through the air as the three clashed violently. The resulting shockwave sent Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling stumbling back more than 10 steps. In contrast, the Fire Crystal Ape King only took 2 steps back before stabilizing. The raw strength of demonic beasts was fully on display. Is that all you've got? You dare challenge me, and you don't even know your limits. The Fire Crystal Ape King bellowed with a mocking laugh, disdain dripping from its voice. However, before its laughter faded, a melodic zither note rang out. In an instant, jade-green sound waves rippled through the air, rapidly engulfing the Fire Crystal Ape King. What the hell is this? The Fire Crystal Ape King's eyes flashed with fury as it threw a punch at the green sound waves. A resounding crack echoed, and the waves shattered under its fist. Pathetic! The Fire Crystal Ape King sneered as the sound waves crumbled under its might. But before the sneer could fully form on its face, it froze. The shattered sound waves didn't dissipate as expected. Instead, they clung to its body like maggots, quickly seeping into its skin. As the green light infiltrated its body, the Fire Crystal Ape King's eyes widened in alarm. It felt a strange numbness spreading through its body, and even the flow of its energy seemed to be stifled. Little girl, you're courting death. At this moment, the Fire Crystal Ape King finally realized the true power of the sound waves. It let out an enraged roar, its blood-red eyes glaring at the young woman in white and green perched atop the tree. With a violent stomp, it transformed into a fiery blur, charging at Huan with a terrifying murderous aura. Zong. Huan's gaze remained fixed on the zither, but she sensed the sudden violent wind approaching. Her slender fingers swiftly strummed the strings, sending brilliant emerald sound waves shooting forth from the instrument. The waves transformed into a torrent of emerald arrows, raining down on the Fire Crystal Ape King like a storm. Ding ding ding. The emerald arrows bombarded the Fire Crystal Ape King's body, their sharpness piercing even its formidable defense. Despite the creature's tough hide, it winced in pain as the arrows shattered, turning into a green liquid that clung to its skin and continued to seep into its body. Roar! The Fire Crystal Ape King bellowed in fury, its blood-red eyes glowing brighter. With a surge of fiery red light, it forcefully shattered the green liquid clinging to its body. Its massive hand then shot out, aiming to crushing Huan with a devastating blow. Huan glanced up at the incoming fist but made no move to dodge. At that moment, a massive black iron seal suddenly whistled through the air, growing larger as it approached. The sound of a dragon's roar echoed as a black dragon spirit emerged from the seal, its enormous claws colliding head-on with the Fire Crystal Ape King's fist. Boom! The resulting shockwave caused the surrounding trees to instantly disintegrate into dust. However, the Fire Crystal Ape King's attack had been successfully blocked. Damn brat! The Fire Crystal Ape King glared furiously at the massive iron seal hovering in midair. There, Lin Dong stood, looking down at it with a calm and steady gaze. Here I thought you'd enjoy a little music to go with the fight. Guess you're not one for good taste, you brute, Lin Dong remarked playfully. Haha. Huan couldn't help but giggle at Lin Dong's teasing comment. It was clear that he was deliberately provoking the Fire Crystal Ape King. I'll tear you apart. Enraged beyond measure, the Fire Crystal Ape King's blood-red eyes filled with murderous intent. Just as it prepared to strike again, 2 fierce gusts of wind came from behind. Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling had joined the fray. Even the Fire Crystal Ape King knew better than to ignore them. Its power had already been diminished by Huan's sound waves, and now it was forced to turn and engage Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling once again. Lin Dong watched the fierce battle from above, then waved his hand. The massive black dragon spirit surrounding him shot out, enveloping Huan. Lindong had noticed that her sound waves had a unique ability to suppress the Fire Crystal Ape King's strength. With her help, the battle would be much easier. Protecting her was now essential. The dragon spirit howled as it wrapped around Huan. She cast a quick glance at Lindong, then increased the tempo of her zither playing. Emerald sound waves continuously spread out, intertwining with the Fire Crystal Ape King as it fought Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling. While the battle raged on, Yuan Fong led a group of disciples, swiftly dealing with the Fire Crystal Demon apes that had been put to sleep by Huan earlier. Boom, boom, boom. The fierce battle continued to intensify in the depths of the forest, but as time passed, the Fire Crystal Ape King began to show signs of fatigue. All thanks to the erosion caused by Huan's sound waves. Without them, it would have been difficult for Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling to contain the beast. This big guy is on his last legs, Huan observed with a hint of delight in her eyes. Her hands subconsciously slowed down as she plucked the zither strings. Don't slow down the music. Lindong, standing closest to her, immediately noticed the change in the tempo. His expression darkened, and he spoke in a low, urgent voice. Huan hesitated, but before she could resume the assault, the Fire Crystal Ape King suddenly let out a deafening roar. The roar disrupted the slowing sound waves, breaking through the weakening assault. Boom! The moment the sound waves were blocked, the Fire Crystal Ape King's aura surged violently. With a powerful strike, it sent Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling flying backward. Then, with a stomp of its foot, the ape launched itself into the sky. Watch out, it's trying to escape. Huan's face changed as she hurriedly strummed the zither again, attempting to stop the Ape King. Roar! Roar! However, the Fire Crystal Ape King had grown wise to her methods. It let out ear-piercing roars filled with primal energy, drowning out Huan's sound waves and disrupting her efforts to trap it. Damn it! Huan bit her lip in frustration, her eyes flashing with cold determination. She was just about to unleash a more powerful technique when Lindong, who had been standing atop the iron seal observing the battle, suddenly darted forward. Whoosh! Lindong moved with blinding speed. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the Fire Crystal Ape King. A puny fifth Nirvana brat dares block me? You're courting death. The Fire Crystal Ape King snarled, its giant fist surging with immense force as it swung violently at Lindong. Lindong, be careful! Huan and the others shouted in alarm. They knew all too well how fearsome the Ape King's attacks were. Boom! The massive fist loomed closer in Lindong's vision, but his expression remained calm and composed. A gray line flashed across his brow, quickly forming and splitting open to reveal a fearsome, gray eye filled with overwhelming malice. The wild demon eye. Both Huan and the others recognized the strange eye on Lindong's forehead, and their expressions grew tense. The gray eye appeared without any pause, and a terrifyingly destructive gray beam of light shot forth. As the beam cut through the air, the space around it twisted. The Fire Crystal Ape King's expression changed drastically as an intense sense of danger washed over it. Roar! With a bellowing roar, the Fire Crystal Ape King unleashed a torrent of crimson energy from its body, rapidly condensing it into fiery red crystal that encased its entire form. The sunlight reflecting off the crimson crystal made it appear as though the ape was covered in an impenetrable, diamond-like armor, radiating an aura of immense strength and defense. Yet, the gray beam didn't stop. It tore through the air and, in the next instant, collided head-on with the crimson crystal. At the moment of impact, a faint hissing sound echoed continuously. Underneath the crystal, the Fire Crystal Ape King's blood-red eyes suddenly contracted, a look of horror flooding them. As it watched in disbelief, cracks began to rapidly spread across the surface of the crystal where the gray beam had struck. Crack! Crack! The cracks spread at an alarming rate, covering the entire crystal in an instant. Break! Lindong's eyes were filled with a grayish energy as he spoke in a cold, chilling voice. Boom! At the sound of his command, the fiery red crystal shattered into pieces. Shards of crystal scattered through the air, and the gray beam continued to pierce forward, streaking like lightning toward the fire crystal Ape King's forehead. With a terrifying speed, the beam bored through the Ape King's skull, passing cleanly out the back of its head, leaving a trail of blood. The beam flew off into the distance, vanishing from sight. A gaping wound opened on the fire crystal Ape King's forehead, blood pouring down its face. Despite suffering such a lethal blow, the Ape King didn't die immediately. Instead, its face contorted into a fierce, twisted expression as it staggered back several steps, its aura rapidly weakening. It's still not dead? EngHuan and the others were shocked to see the fire crystal Ape King still alive. The resilience of this demonic beast was truly terrifying. Boom. Lin Dong's expression remained calm as he looked at the blood-soaked Ape King. Without any hesitation, he clenched his fist, summoning the black iron seal. It whistled through the air, rapidly expanding like a mountain as it smashed down onto the fire crystal Ape King's body with overwhelming force. Bang! A thunderous sound rang out in the sky. The fire crystal Ape King's massive body was sent crashing to the ground, where it landed with a heavy impact that caused the earth to tremble violently. The ground collapsed, and the black iron seal sat like a mountain, pinning the fire crystal Ape King beneath it. Giant cracks spread out across the ground from the force of the impact. In the sky, Lin Dong gazed down coldly at the Ape King trapped under the black iron seal. With a flash of icy determination in his eyes, he clenched both fists. In an instant, his arms transformed into two fearsome and menacing azure dragon arms. Whoosh! In a flash, Lin Dong appeared atop the black iron seal, his fists clenched tightly. He began raining down punch after punch onto the seal with unrelenting force. Clang! 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 The sharp sound of metal striking metal rang out as Lin Dong's violent blows echoed across the battlefield. EngHuan and the others watched in stunned silence as the mountain-like black iron seal was forcibly driven deeper into the ground by Lin Dong's relentless attacks. What a brutal guy! Jiang Kuan swallowed hard, a shiver running through his body. Lin Dong had remained relatively quiet up until this point, but when he did make his move, it was shockingly ruthless. Even with the fire crystal Ape King's incredible vitality, there was no way it could survive such an onslaught. As EngHuan and the others looked at Lin Dong in awe, he finally stopped his barrage of punches. His body shuddered slightly, and the azure dragon arms dissipated. Lin Dong glanced at the others casually and rubbed his slightly numb fists as if nothing had happened. When dealing with a demonic beast like this, you can't give it a chance to go all out. If it escapes, none of us could stop it. Blood continued to seep out from under the iron seal, pooling on the ground. Lin Dong stood atop the seal, his young face making Jiang Kuan and the others uneasy. They realized that if they were in his place, they would never have the resolve to finish the fight so decisively. Is that thing finally dead? Yuan Ling asked with a nervous chuckle. Lin Dong smiled faintly and raised his hand, causing the black iron seal to shrink and fly back into his palm. As the seal withdrew, the strong stench of blood filled the air. EngHuan's face turned a little pale as she caught a whiff of the bloody scene. Clearly, she didn't have the stomach to inspect the gruesome remains of the Ape King. With a wave of her delicate hand, the earth stirred and quickly covered up the bloody pit. After burying the remains, EngHuan gracefully descended from the tree, cradling her jade zither. She flipped her hand, and the instrument disappeared. The wild demon eye is truly powerful. The fact that you've mastered it is pretty remarkable. EngHuan glanced at Lin Dong. Without the use of his wild demon eye, the fire crystal Ape King wouldn't have been severely injured, and the rest of their brutal assault might not have worked. Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling both cast wary looks at Lin Dong. The pride they had once felt had completely disappeared after witnessing Lin Dong's true strength and ruthless methods. They no longer saw him as a mere novice disciple. Lin Dong chuckled. Each use of the wild demon eye came at a great cost, as it corroded the user's eyes. Such power was not without its dangers. However, thanks to the mysterious stone talisman in his body, Lin Dong was not threatened by the eye's corrosive effects. Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as Lin Dong and the others were speaking, the sound of rushing wind echoed through the forest. Yuan Fong soon appeared, leading a group of disciples. Her tense expression only relaxed when she saw that Lin Dong and the others were unharmed. "Where's the Fire Crystal Ape King?" Yuan Fong asked, her gaze sweeping over the area. Jiang Kuan stomped his foot on the ground, and Yuan Fong followed his gaze. Her expression changed as she spotted the blood-soaked earth and the giant pit beneath them. "You already dealt with it?" she exclaimed in surprise. "Heh, it's all thanks to junior brother Lin Dong and his wild demon eye," Yuan Ling chuckled. "The wild demon eye?" Yuan Fong and the other disciples were visibly shocked. As disciples of Dao Sect, they were well aware of the mysterious martial art of the Wild Hall, but they hadn't expected Lin Dong to have successfully mastered it. If it weren't for senior brothers Jiang Kuan and Yuan Ling exhausting the Fire Crystal Ape King, I wouldn't have had the chance to strike, Lin Dong said modestly, shaking his head, with no intent to take all the credit. "Huan, what about the other demonic apes?" Huan asked, turning her gaze to Yuan Fong. "They've all been taken care of," Yuan Fong nodded. However, her expression turned complicated as her eyes landed on the immortal Yuan ancient tree in the distance. She knew that if word of this tree got out, the entire Bloodstone territory would descend into chaos. Compared to the seeds of the immortal Yuan ancient tree, this mine was insignificant. The others followed her gaze, their eyes burning with a mixture of excitement and caution as they looked at the ancient black tree that had sprouted from the ground. What had started as a simple mission had now become far more complicated. "How can we tell if there are seeds inside this sapling?" Lin Dong asked, looking at Huan. "We'll have to wait for the fruits to drop naturally. If there are seeds, they will emerge on their own," Huan explained softly. "Judging by the energy in the fruits, they should fall within 5 days." 5 days? Lin Dong nodded thoughtfully. "Should we call in all the disciples?" Yuan Fong asked. "That would attract too much attention," Lin Dong shook his head. After a moment of thought, he added, "We'll keep things discreet but tight. No need to draw unnecessary attention, just proceed as usual." If things were truly as chaotic in Bloodstone territory as Huan and the others had said, any large-scale action would only attract unwanted attention. And if word about the immortal Yuan ancient tree were to leak out, their situation would become incredibly dangerous. Yuan Fong nodded in agreement. Although Lin Dong's experience was limited, his cautious and steady words left no room for argument. "In that case, we'll wait for the next 5 days, Huan said, her gaze shifting toward the immortal Yuan ancient tree. Her delicate hand slowly clenched into a fist. For some reason, she couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would become far more troublesome than they had initially expected.